What if I told you that a plane older than your grandfather just made every advanced airliner look like a pathetic joke? The B-52 bomber just received an engine upgrade so revolutionary that airline executives are literally having panic attacks behind closed doors. How does it feel knowing that a 1950s war machine is now more efficient than the cutting-edge jet you flew on last week? Because the B-52 was supposed to be a museum piece by now, a relic of the Cold War that had no business flying in the 21st century. Yet while shiny new jets came and went, retired and scrapped after only a couple of decades, the B-52 just kept on grinding through the skies. This 70-year-old beast has outlived fleets worth billions, a living embarrassment to every aviation giant that promised their latest jet was the future. It proves that the obsession with new projects, flashy prototypes, and hype-driven launches was never about necessity. It was about selling an illusion. And here's the thing, the B-52 isn't limping into retirement. It's still the backbone of U.S. strategic power, flying nuclear missions and projecting force across the globe. That should terrify the aviation industry. Because if a 1950s airframe can still carry the weight of America's military strategy, what does that say about the fragility of the modern aircraft market? Boeing, Airbus, and governments around the world burned mountains of cash pushing next-gen fleets that didn't even last half as long. Meanwhile, the B-52 sat there proving them wrong, decade after decade. And if the aircraft itself wasn't humiliating enough, the engines powering it were an outright scandal. The TF-33 engines were supposed to have been retired generations ago, but instead, they became a bottomless money pit. The Air Force was pouring tens of millions of dollars every single year just to keep them breathing. Replacement parts had to be scavenged like spare parts for a junkyard car, and when those weren't available, technicians resorted to Cold War-era hacks that no modern fleet should ever rely on. The most ridiculous of them? Explosive cart starts, literally using small charges to blast the engines awake. It was loud, unreliable, and flat-out insane for a superpower's frontline bomber in the 21st century. And yet the plane kept flying, held together with outdated hacks and brute force maintenance. The TF-33s were horribly inefficient, guzzling fuel like there was no tomorrow, and creating massive logistics headaches. They screamed so loud that stealth was laughable, and their design life had expired decades ago, turning every flight into a roll of the dice. The craziest part? This so-called flying antique wasn't just ferrying cargo. It was carrying nuclear weapons, while commercial airlines bragged about their cutting-edge safety standards. The old bomber made their billion-dollar fleets look like fragile toys. But the industry's nightmare was only beginning, because what came next turned this flying fossil into a weapon that could rewrite the future of aviation. The F-130 isn't just a replacement bolted onto an old bomber. It's a declaration of war on everything the aviation industry thought it understood about progress. Rolls-Royce designed it to deliver up to 40% better fuel efficiency compared to the ancient TF-33s, and that single number has executives in commercial aviation sweating bullets. A bomber that first flew in the 1950s now runs with engines that outperform state-of-the-art airliners. Airlines spend years hyping marginal efficiency gains of 2 or 3% in their next-gen fleets. The B-52J just crushed them with a leap so massive, it makes those promises look like marketing scams. But the shock doesn't end with fuel savings. Each F-130 can pump out 17,000 pounds of thrust, a number that flips the script on decades of design philosophy. This thrust upgrade doesn't just make the B-52J faster off the runway, it makes it more powerful than aircraft that burned through hundreds of billions of dollars in research, testing, and production. Every so-called next-generation passenger jet looks flimsy next to a Cold War bomber resurrected by a single engine upgrade. It's humiliating for companies like Boeing and Airbus, who bet their futures on fragile new designs while an antique just leapfrogged their crown jewels. And what really twists the knife is that the F-130 doesn't stop at military power, it's creeping straight into the civilian world. The shocking crossover starts with the fact that the F-130 isn't some alien creation. It's a cousin of the Pearl engine family, the same lineage powering luxury business jets like the Gulfstream G7000. That means the engine driving America's nuclear bomber fleet shares DNA with private jets flown by billionaires. Translation: a bomber's engine is now sleek enough, efficient enough, and polished enough to dominate the civilian skies. That connection alone is a nightmare scenario for every airline CEO who bragged about advanced fleets. Because if a military workhorse can carry technology straight from the business jet world, then passenger airlines are officially behind. And the crossover doesn't stop at branding. The F-130 comes with FADEC digital engine controls, the kind of full authority systems that fine-tune fuel flow and thrust in real time. That technology makes the B-52J smarter than many civilian fleets in the air today. Pair that with the advanced materials Rolls-Royce has baked into the design, stronger, more heat-resistant alloys that last longer under stress. And you've got an engine that is not only more powerful, but also tougher and cleaner than what the commercial industry has been selling as cutting edge. Airlines promised quiet, efficient, durable engines for decades, yet here comes a bomber proving it can do all of that and more. For the first time in history, a war machine isn't just threatening enemies on the battlefield, it's threatening the business model of the entire aviation industry. So here's the nightmare scenario for aviation executives. The world's most feared bomber has set the new benchmark for what an engine should be. Rolls-Royce just showed that durability and efficiency aren't limited to flashy new passenger planes or experimental projects. They can be retrofitted into an aircraft from the 1950s and still crush everything on the market. The commercial side can't spin its way out of this because the numbers are there in black and white. 40% efficiency, 17,000 pounds of thrust, lower noise, lower emissions, fewer maintenance headaches. This is why airlines and engine makers are panicking. Their billion-dollar innovation cycles now look like frauds next to the B-52J's revival. They pushed hype, delays, and overruns, while the military quietly leapfrogged their entire sector with an engine that has both the muscle of a bomber and the polish of a luxury jet. The aviation industry thought it set the rules. The F-130 just tore the rulebook apart. And the secret to making this old jet smarter than new aircraft lies in how Boeing is rebuilding it from the inside out. Instead of ripping the whole platform apart and starting over, Boeing is using simulation tools and digital twins to stress test every component before it's even built. They've created virtual replicas of the B-52 airframe, letting engineers predict stress points, analyze aerodynamics, and verify systems integration without touching the physical plane. On top of that, structural reinforcements across the wings and pylons ensure the new engines don't just fit, but perform beyond anything imagined in the 1950s. The result is a jet that doesn't just survive modernization, it thrives in it. Boeing is showing that you don't always need a brand new jet. You can take an old warhorse, inject 21st century tech, and end up with something tougher than the fresh designs airlines keep overselling. This approach is a direct humiliation for the commercial aviation industry. Airlines have spent decades promoting next-generation fleets only for those same fleets to run into reliability issues, software bugs, or massive cost overruns. And while the technology is rewriting the rules of performance, the economics behind the upgrade are hitting the aviation industry even harder. The money tells its own story. Rolls-Royce dropped a $600 million investment into its Indianapolis plant to support the F-130 production line. That move created more than 1,000 jobs directly in engineering, machining, and testing, while also funneling contracts to small and mid-sized suppliers across the United States. Every engine being produced ties American labor directly to global aviation innovation. Compare that to airlines that outsource production across multiple countries to shave costs, and suddenly the optics are very different. The B-52J's program strengthens domestic industry, while commercial giants are still apologizing for production delays overseas. And the scale is massive. Over 600 engines are being built for the fleet, each one a decades-long commitment to jobs, maintenance contracts, and software upgrades that keep rolling back into American infrastructure. This isn't just a defense program, it's an industrial strategy that guarantees economic benefits far beyond the Air Force. For an aviation market drowning in complaints about outsourcing and supply chain chaos, this model looks unbeatable. And when you stack this against the failures of the commercial sector, the gap turns into a full-blown disaster for airlines. The plan is for the B-52J to fly into the 2050s alongside the stealthy B-21 Raider. That means the U.S. Air Force doesn't need a brand new bomber every decade, because the B-52J fills the role of long-range endurance while the B-21 handles stealth penetration. This dual structure devastates the old logic that air forces need to constantly replace fleets to stay competitive. If one of the oldest airframes in history can be paired with the newest stealth platform, it exposes how unnecessary the constant cycle of replacements really is. For the commercial sector, this is nothing short of apocalyptic. Airlines and engine makers sell themselves on innovation, yet the B-52J forces them to confront the reality that much of that innovation was nothing more than expensive marketing. When an aircraft designed with slide rules in the 1950s can outperform their brand new fleets thanks to smart upgrades, the illusion crumbles. The billions spent hyping new projects are suddenly seen for what they are, not progress, but profit-driven hype cycles that collapse under scrutiny. So, if you want to see how these shocking upgrades keep rewriting history, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because what's coming next will shake aviation to its core.